51 meetings together. So that's a lot. I'm presenting, kind of what we talked about last week and what I sent in the meeting notes over the weekend. And, Chris, I know you're on the phone, but you had mentioned you wanted to talk about PR 300 today. And is it something you want to talk about verbally while I display?
Sure. I presented it a few weeks ago, just introduce it to people. It's just two tutorials on how to write test cases for the Site Challenger framework. And they're just kind of exemplary tests for configuring the device under test. I don't show any traffic tests at this time. I'll hopefully add more examples in the future, but it's really just a set of tutorials and diagrams and trivial test cases. So I'm hoping we can just merge that in so there's a resource for people to learn from. It's nothing earth-shattering. Okay, sounds good. I can probably do that today. You said you got a couple of looks good to me's and nothing else really, so I can do that today. Okay. Anyone else have a comment on this PR, or had you had a chance to take a look?
Yep, I think I provided some comments to Chris separately. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for those. I did actually react to those and made some changes in response to that. So thank you, Hannah.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. I can take care of that today, Chris, after the call. Okay. All right.
Hey, Christina, have we gone over with the community that we've moved, or in the process of moving Dash under OCP Psi and the SONiC bits under the
Linux Foundation?
Linux Foundation. Does everybody understand that?
We've talked about it briefly, maybe 4 weeks ago or so, and we can talk about it more today, Gerald, if you want to give a brief talk.
Well, I just want them to be aware that the move is being made. So, I mean, the merge of, I think we talked about it in previous meetings, the merge of the Dash under the OCP side, that I think everybody understands and knows is happening. And then on top of that, we are moving the entire GitHub under SONiC properly. And that work has just started, and there's just engineers on our side doing, dotting the I's, crossing the T's on exactly how that's done. But we expect that to be done over the next week or two at the most. And so it won't change anything that we're doing at all. It's just that it's going to be sitting permanently in its proper place.
Yeah.
So
now that the community's gotten more mature.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that the community's gotten more mature and moved forward, Did anyone have any questions?
We do want this to be more than, a Microsoft project. We will be introducing, in the future, encryption and everything for other use cases and things like equivalent to outpost type use cases, edge cases, and other edge cases that are more general. So, really want that to be done in a forum that is not Microsoft only, and ownership it'll actually have the same governance as SONiC, et cetera, and we'll appreciate all the input that we get from being part of Linux Foundation. And it will also give us a place to meet. When we have those meetings, we can kind of coincide meetings with SONiC meetings more properly, et cetera, and same with OCP, which is the two places we normally meet.
Any Q&A from the crowd here? Sounds like not. Okay, so it sounds like no questions, Gerald. So what we're going to do is just work on the back end of getting this work done here on our side, guys.
So I have one quick question, since I represent in the SONiC board as well. So on the, today what happens is that we have a TSC, also handles all those things which is under SONiC, chaired by Leva. So are we saying that, since the governance is moving under Linux Foundation, the TSCs will also really figure out in terms of who are going to be the maintainers and reviewers and so forth as well?
We can talk about that. I mean, we're going to evolve exactly the way we are now. And Lenny, Liwa's team is already involved with this. We have Prince, we have Gohan and Liwa already involved with this. So we will talk about those kind of things ongoing, but we would have anyways. And it's just more mature now. So yeah, there might be some changes in the future to how we do approvals or how we review things or whatever, but that will be done with this same crew here, right? I mean, we'll talk about it and figure out what the best thing to do. And the SONiC people have already been involved, and quite frankly, even most of the work that Keysight's done has been to maintain the SONiC environment and the SI environment, so that we didn't have to go through a bunch of changes just because we move under them later. So I don't think that, so changes might come, but it will come due to the people on this call, discussing things and figuring out what the best thing is for Dash. And mostly, what the best thing is for quality, what the best thing is for moving faster, what the best thing is for getting more input around the industry. So yeah, changes might happen, but it'll happen with the people here.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree that the people who are here are going to be driving, since they are the best suited for that. However, since we say that it will be under the same governance, governance rules and so forth, we'll probably start to adopt those governance rules and start probably writing down who the maintainers and reviewers are, so for everybody knows that, okay, who to reach out to in terms of what needs to get approved and so forth.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, because that's why we're moving. It's a more mature environment that we took part of, and many of you took part of for years to build that environment. So we'll take advantage of, if it's working like that, which I think it is, then of course we're going to take advantage of that and mature, Dash even more. So yeah, I think changes will happen, but it'll happen. There's enough people on this call who are part of SONiC and SI already that, we'll just discuss, how it's done in those communities, and we'll probably slowly start adopting, all the types of governance and reviewers and all that kind of stuff. And that's a good thing. Just
sounds good.
Makes
thanks.
Go a little bit smoother. Yeah.
Okay. And Prince, did we want to cover 10 minutes of Q&A or anything around the private link service tunnel? Or guys on the call, did you come to the call with any questions about those features that we talked about last week?
So Krishna, I would like to cover metering requirements today. So just
the what? I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. The what requirements?
Can you hear me? Hello.
It's kind of in and out for me. Is it for anyone else?
It's breaking very bad. Yeah, it's breaking very bad.
It's
breaking bad.
Sound like a tin. You're talking through a tin can of some sort. It's weird.
Okay. That's still not
He's
good,
one
right?
step phone back.
No, I think maybe you have to log out and log back in, Prince. I think it's something
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah. I will.
That's okay.
Can we look also at PR297 while he logs in back? It's just a test plan. Was there for like few weeks. If we can get that accepted. There was some feedback. We addressed it with the template for the test plan. We just kept a link to the SONiC one instead of doing a copy paste here. So.
Go on. Sorry, I'm just reading through this. Chris Summers reviewed yesterday. Why not use blah? It's more accurate. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you're asking for a merge here?
Yes.
Okay. And we reused the existing diagram. And it says fixed image. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do that unless anyone has any objections. Christina to merge today. I'll make a note. Okay, I can do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for contributing. Let's see if we have Prince back. I think we do.
So, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. Now, what were you saying you wanted to talk about, Prince?
So I want to talk about the second PR, the metering requirements.
Okay. 313. Okay.
Shall I go ahead or?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want me to display or you?
Yeah, I can try to share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
Sorry, I have one question. I mean, should we close the service tunneling, or before we go into this one, or?
I think we were waiting to see if there were additional Q&A, Gohan, but if there aren't any, do you mean close the PR or close the discussion? I'm sorry.
Okay, okay, so if there's no feedback, okay, that's fine, all right.
So Gohan, on the service tunnel, that PR is updated with the feedback from last week's meeting. So if you need, we can discuss, or if you have offline comments, I can address in the PR.
I see, all right. So we'll wait for some, some feedback to come, right? So if there's no feedback, we'll get that merged.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, so this is again a follow-up from a couple of weeks back. MD presented the metering proposal, and one of the feedback we got from the community was to clearly lay out our requirements for metering. So this PR is just capturing the requirements. The proposal is still part of another PR, but at a high level, these are the requirements, so we can go one by one. So this basically the metering and billing are is used interchangeably. So it's mainly for billing the customers from for each of the different type of packets forwarding scenarios. So the first one is like billing shall be per ENI level. So so this is one key point to keep in mind. Like it's an ENI level packet counters that we use for billing the customers, and the application shall be able to query metering packet bytes. So it's basically the bytes that we are interested in. This is just a generic statement that the buckets must be of Uint64 size, and it starts from value 0 and shall be counting the number of bytes. So basically, we are looking at three different type of metering. One is policy-based metering, another is route table, and the third one is mapping table-based. So this will kind of cover all our requirements for billing the customer. So why the policy-based metering is for specific destination. Like if you are interested in counting the bytes or packets going to a specific destination, and that which need to be built separately. So that is what we are talking about, like the policy-based metering. The next is like route table-based metering, where the metering bucket is associated to a route table, and it can be used for scenarios like VNet peering. And then there is a mapping table where again, like if a specific destination need to be built, then we can associate the metering to the mapping table. So these are at a high level three different type of metering requirements that we have. So again, like one is policy based for specific destination, route table based, and then the mapping table based. So this takes into consideration some of the packet forwarding, like in the outbound direction, we have the ACLs routing, and that's how the packet flows. So when it looks, yeah, yeah, if it gets disconnected, I'll join from my phone. But when the packet flows through the different sections of pipeline, like it can hit all these different scenarios, and in such cases we have defined the order of priority where a policy takes precedence over routing and routing takes precedence over mapping. So this will be the order of preference if metering is associated to all these three sections of pipeline. Yeah, so that's this one. And next is like you in case,
so you will
like
count one bucket versus all three of them, is that?
Yeah, so if a hit happens on all three of them, then this will be the order, like we want to meter it based on the policy rather than route. And we don't want to duplicate
order, like order meaning that you will count it on these. The counting will happen on all three buckets. It's just that you'll do it in this order. Is that what that means?
No, the counting should be happening only on
single. Okay.
On single one, because we don't want to have duplicate counts and overbill the customer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So then, like if certain scenarios require that a mapping should take precedence over routing, which is some of the scenarios that we have. In that case, we have an override flag in the mapping table with the metering bucket. So what this means is, like, if in the same order, like if we want mapping to be counted, right, then we can have a generic override flag in the mapping table that says that, okay, count on the mapping table rather than the route. So when policy is enabled for, so again, like the policy will always take precedent, and that's what it's clearly stated here. Like if when policy is enabled for a route, it takes higher precedent than routing and mapping metering bucket. But if there are cases that we need mapping to take preference, then it can use this override flag. So here are the different scenarios that implementation shall aggregate the counters on an ENI per metering bucket. So this will be the combination for getting the billing data. So again, like all traffic from an ENI to peered VNet, private link. So I think all these different scenarios are described in this document in the later part. What is a peered VNet? What is a private link destination? So this is again like some sort of mapping that we use for private link. And that's where, like, if we have to count the private link destination, then we can use the metering associated to a mapping and use the override flag. Then all traffic from an ENI to internet destination, that can use policy-based metering. So again, the other one is traffic from ENI to cross AZ, that can be within same ENet or cross region destination towards the peer VNet. So all these different packet flows we want to count or bill separately, right? So that's why we have to associate metering bucket in different sections of the pipeline to clearly identify.
That was an important statement you just made there, Prince. Just make sure that they understand this. We charge differently based on where packets are going. Not always, but like, for example, if you're going to a different region, you have to go through the WAN, maybe charged differently in some service cases. Or if you're going to the internet, we have to pay for the internet peering, so you may be charged in a different way. So when you look at these things, these are things that we charge for, and that's why we need the metering. If you couldn't do the metering, then we wouldn't be able to charge for it, and then that would break our services. So it's, I think this is really, you've done a good job on this, Prince, and whoever helped you, because it's pretty clear.
The only thing I would add to that is that we also measure by time. Is there a time component here to metering as well? Like by the hour?
No, I think not really. Yeah, this is once associated to route or mapping. Like once the flow is created, it will be counted for that flow. Yeah.
That is handled by the software. So the hardware never have the time, right? So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's when they collect it, Steve. That's the time. It's not It's not collected by the DPU. It's just when they collect it, they can aggregate the times there. Software will do
it. If you don't mind, Prince, could you put a link here to this section in the chat, please?
Yeah, sure. I can.
I'll do it while Prince is talking.
Okay. Yeah. Let's share
thanks,
the PR.
Christina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Continue on, Prince. Good job. That was very clear. I like it.
Yeah, thank you. So the next is like customer is billed based on the number of bytes sent and received separately. So which means this metering bucket should be able to count both RX and TX packet, right? Inbound and outbound packet. So so when we associate a metering bucket to any of these tables, it should have both RX and TX counters that that are counting the bytes separately, right? So that's this requirement. Now the other thing is
this part I do not understand. So the ARCs and inbound, outbound, they will be associated with a different bucket?
No, the same bucket. The same bucket should have both outbound and inbound.
But they will be associated with different rules, right? So, the policy rules, routing table rules.
Yeah. So for example, if there is a once this is evaluated and if the metering bucket is associated to this mapping entry, right? For that particular flow, you have a bucket, and that bucket should count both outbound packet for that and also the inbound for that particular flow, which is having a metering bucket.
How do they decide the direction?
It's the connection, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah, the connection.
So Prince, do we also count packets or just even bytes are sufficient
the bytes
to count?
I mean bytes is
only
sufficient for our like for our billing requirements.
Okay.
But
for debugging purposes, you might.
Let me just quickly check if.
I'm a little confused about what you're saying about inbound and outbound. Are there independent counters for inbound and outbound, or are they aggregated into the same counter?
So the same metering bucket should have an outbound and inbound, like RX bytes and TX bytes. Yeah.
So a bucket contains two counters, one's inbound,
Correct.
one's outbound, and then based on the direction, you choose which one you'll count.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't know if we just make that clear, add a line or something in the document just to make that clear, since people keep asking questions on it.
Okay.
Also, Prince.
One bucket with the receive and transmit. I think that'll make it clear to people.
Okay. Yeah, I will clarify that.
Yeah, and also, Prince, I don't know if you've mentioned anything about scale, like per ENI, like do you have like sort of an estimate or even an order of magnitude of how many buckets there may be for an ENI?
So this would be limited to the DPU scaling limits, but from a requirement perspective, at a very high, like the highest scale, I can probably get the data and give us a reference. Or let me see, Jay, I see Jay from the team. Jay, do you know if we have a scaling limit on this, or we can check offline and update this?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So do you know if we have a upper scaling limit on the number of buckets?
Number of buckets.
The number of metering buckets, yeah. If you're.
I mean, these are like different classes of billing, right? So is it like dozens or is it like millions?
It will be thousands as far as I know, but I would say like Jay can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if this ENI traffic will be handled by two DPUs, were you counting them separately, or so what's your?
Yeah, that will be counted separately. This is per DPU. counters.
Yeah, like per ENI, like how many buckets would you expect for like typical scale? I mean, it's a very important requirement because it could very well affect like how these are implemented.
Friends, do you want us to give a number from our serious implementation? Or
yeah,
on the serious this thing, I think we have a 4K buckets per ENI.
Okay, 4K per ENI. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we should document this thing in our scale document. So as to say that this is something.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Sure. I think here we can have like ENI
exactly.
metering. Okay. Yeah. I'll I'll confirm that with the team.
The other question is, like you mentioned, that this is RX and the TX. Well, this is more like a software requirement. This is not you asking for the hardware to say using the same hardware instance, right? You just say the software behavior you want to like accounting for both RX and TX, right?
No, but that should be counted by the hardware and provided to the.
No, it will be counted by hardware, but say for example, hardware could have a 2 bucket, one for RX, one for TX, right? Or you say, hey, I want to have only 1 bucket for total, but I want to count RX and TX.
So from the application side, we'll be creating 1 bucket and require that bucket to be counted for both RX and TX. But the internal implementation, if they have to use 2 different buckets for that, then it's up to the implementation.
Okay.
But from
this is the bucket only for the counting purpose, or you plan to, because normally the meter also do the shaping. So do you have a separate RX TX shaping requirement or not?
No, this is only for the counting purposes, for the billing purpose. Yeah.
Gotcha. Then can you?
I hope people are not. Guys, I hope people are not confusing between metering versus the rate limiting, because why are we bringing the shaping concept in the same context of metering? This metering is billing and it's not rate limiting.
Yeah, because mine normally I assume the metering
so
means
what,
the rate
limiting. Then why can we change it to just counter?
Yes.
Requirement.
Yeah, I think we should define what the definition of metering is in this context here, because I think there's probably a historical reason why we call this thing as a metering, because in networking terms, and whenever you say metering, people think it's rate limiting, and then that's why this question of shaping versus rate limiting and so forth coming. This is not rate limiting. This is billing. So I think let's make sure that we
I can get that clarified
in
this. Yeah. But I think, Gohan, we want to use metering because it's been used.
No, that's fine. I mean, clarify is good. Yeah.
Okay.
Although it does say metering is essential for billing the customers and below are the high level requirements. Do we need to make it more clear than that?
Yeah, I can
make
it
just make it clear. It's not like a token bucket. You're doing things like policing, those kind of things, right? So just make that clear.
Because he later on he mentioned the bucket. That's why I was thinking the token bucket.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things basically are cross-referencing, and then I absolutely knew that there will be people will be confused here because of the fact that when I explained to some people within my group, they were initially saying, "Oh, it's like policing or rate limiting." No, I said, "No, this is not. This is billing," and then the entire conversation changes as a result. Right? So,
okay,
thanks.
Okay, so
just one clarification question, right? Like so. Basically, the metering bucket derivation happens in the outbound policy evaluation stage, and that bucket will be used for both outbound and inbound side of the connection, right? Like it will not happen in the inbound policy evaluation, right?
So inbound policy evaluation has another metering, like if that is the first packet coming. So.
Okay, so like you're saying, like metering bucket can get like for a given connection, we have to evaluate both inbound and outbound, right? Like so.
So based on the outbound connection, you can create an inbound flow as well, right?
So who initiates the connection first?
So this is on the outbound direction. Like, let's say that.
Could we say that if the connection was inbound from the host side going out, so that is it's going outbound, right? In the sense the initiator flow is outbound, then that initiator flow determines the bucket for both the directions of the flow, right? If the flow was incoming, that is, it is coming from external towards the host, then that is an inbound flow. Then the bucket that is evaluated on the inbound direction again will evaluate both the forward and the reverse flows for that connection. So depending on which direction the initiator flow is, right, which direction the flow got initiated, that determines which policies are evaluated for the metering. Would that be the right thing to say?
Yeah, that's the right thing. So Sanjay, are you saying like we can capture that explicitly in this, or?
Yeah, probably. If
okay,
there is some confusion between the inbound and outbound, maybe we could put something like, depends on where the flow was initiated, which direction the flow was initiated.
Yeah, so Prince, that is the expected behavior, is it?
Yes, that's the expected behavior, yes.
Because it looks like it depends on who started the connection is going to decide, because we have to evaluate both inbound and outbound, irrespective of who initiated, right? And it can actually, both of them can in fact give the metering bucket, but it seems like we have to consider the source and then pick one of them. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So Prince, I have one more question. It's like like, what if there's a possibility that you could increment the counter like in the processing pipeline, but then downstream of that, for some reason, congestion or some other reason, the packet is dropped? Like, is there like a formal definition of like that if the packet is dropped, then the counter should be like that, like that it's okay to count the packet and then drop it later, or is it like critical that if the packet is dropped, then the meter is not counted? And I don't mean dropped because of like policy or anything like that. I mean like perhaps there's congestion and some downstream resource is full.
Yeah, that's a good point, but again, I think we should not bill for those packets that are dropped, but
so in general, right? So that should be rare case, right? So that's kind of so we should have a drop counter to understand whether the appliance is dropping any customer packets or not, right? So not due to the policy, but due to the processing capacity of the pipeline, right? So if that happens, I guess you would generate some kind of alert because that's undesirable, right? So there should be some rare case.
Yeah, if you look at this, once you go through the policy, once you go through the rules, if you pass the rules, there's no reason to drop a packet afterwards. That'd be like saying I didn't find a forwarding.
No, but Gerald, like
happen.
Gerald, like suppose like I don't know, you're receiving traffic on both ports at line rate, but all of that traffic is being routed out one port. Like there's congestion cases where you don't have like infinite buffering.
I don't think you have to treat that case because that can happen in any switch, and you can lose packets in a network.
Yeah.
These counters though are at the essentially they logically sit at the ingress of the network, regardless of whether it's in the appliance or not. Logically, they're just like they came off the server. After, if it was on a server, you wouldn't have lost anything. And the point is, you can lose packets, and we don't do anything today about that. I mean, there's nothing we can really do.
I mean, that makes sense. You're saying it's just like any other network drop, like it would have already been counted. Yeah. Okay.
And because this is logically at the edge of the network, that's the way it would have worked. And we need to keep the same behavior.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So as we know that metering resource is limited, so there will be like some optimization in from the application side by allocating meter ID when required and deallocating when not in use, right? So so the application shall associate these metering buckets to ENI as and when required and deallocate when not in use. This kind of a generic optimization part. And here is one other case where application shall bind all associated metering buckets to an ENI when like when the metering bucket or ENI is created, or later when ENI needs to meter on certain buckets. But during the ENI deletion, all associated metering bucket binding should be auto removed. So this what this means is like there is no explicit deletion or unbinding of metering bucket to an ENI during ENI deletion, because that will be a lot of operations during the deletion. So
the binding is auto removed, but also the buckets will also be deleted, right? Upon
so the
ENI
bucket
deletion.
may be used by another ENI, right?
If it is shared, but if it is not
Yeah, if
shared,
it
so
is
you have
shared,
a
correct.
reference count or something?
That's part
I mean
of
that's handled by the application, right? So the the all caging code will handle those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So if it is shared, of course, you will keep it around. Otherwise, you're going to remove it. Got it.
Yes. Yes. The next is like in the inbound side, we have the route rule table that also has a metering bucket association for inbound traffic. But on the inbound direction, the different scenarios I didn't capture now, like it's kept as TBD. So
this part I'm trying to not quite understand, because you cover the inbound and outbound. You say the the bucket will have inbound and outbound. Then what is this inbound billing case?
So okay, so
that is not covered.
So Gohan, like Sanjay was explaining before, this metering bucket in the outbound direction can also create the flow and count for the inbound for that associated flow, right? So
yeah,
this is for the packets that are coming back to the host where there is no where the initiation didn't happen from the host. The initiation is happening based on the first inbound packet.
Yeah.
So in that case, we have a routing rule table, right? Let me show you that. This is the outbound route table, and then we have a route rule table for the inbound direction. And here also we have a metering bucket, and this can count for the first incoming packet. And this metering bucket associated to the ENI can be used for the outbound packet that are created.
Yeah.
So that's the inbound flow I meant in that section. But there are different scenarios like from peered VNet inbound, from internet to inbound. So that's the scenarios that I didn't capture.
Isn't that treated the same? If there's a
yeah.
But then what is this TBD here?
So I can explain like different inbound scenarios as well, right? Like packet coming from internet. I mean,
but
it should be same, but
but this I think the question is that similar, like what you described in the 117, all these different scenarios, or does okay, so
it is same.
Basically this is a high level requirement, right? So, once you get this requirement, I guess we'll relook at what has been presented before, by AMD folks on the detailed implementation, and then there will be I guess there will be P4 pipeline that describe those things, right? So then I guess this TBD things does not really change any of those things, any of those discussion, or this is mainly about the scenario, right? So just for completeness, that there's various inbound scenarios. Then people need to. It's nice that people is going to be aware of it, but it doesn't really change the design or implementation, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Doesn't change any requirement. Yeah. Okay, so that's the requirements from a high level. And then,
so I have one question on the 116. This policy enable for route, they take higher precedence than the routing and the mapping meter bucket. I didn't quite understand this sentence. So what do you mean by, I thought it's mainly about the precedence between the routing and the mapping, right? So what does it takes higher precedence than routing and the mapping meter? You mean, when there's a policy enable for routing, the routing priority will be lower than the mapping priority?
Prince is,
hello, Kaman.
yeah.
I had my
laptop
disconnected,
died.
so I had to drop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, my understanding was you took a look at the mapping, and if there was a mapping that would take quote unquote priority. Is that right, Prince?
So no, the policy evaluation or the priority is like in the order of policy and then routing and then mapping. So if there is a metering bucket associated to a route table, and there's also and that route is pointing to a let's say a VNet mapping table, right? And if the mapping table also has a metering, then that flow should be counting the packets on the route table metering bucket. Unless you have an override flag in the mapping table that requires the meeting to be done on the mapping table based. Yeah. So by default, is routing takes precedence over mapping.
Mm.
Yeah. So like I mentioned in the example, like if you have a say VNet to VNet case, right? So there is some in the VNet to VNet, like you probably don't want to meter on the routing table, but certain mapping tables, certain packets going to a different PA, like cross region or a different availability zone, that has to be metered. But if that same ENI is sending packet to a peered VNet, then that metering is part of the route table, and then you will count on that irrespective of what is there in the metering mapping table, because you don't want to count or bill customers based on the mapping table, but instead it needs to be metered based on the route table because it's going to a peering unit.
Hey, Prince, one basic question. So, like in the outbound or in the pipeline, I understand we have this routing lookup, like route table and then mapping table, right? So, what is the difference between like this policy-based metering versus route table? Like where in the pipeline?
So okay, that's a good question. So when the pipeline first hits the route tables, right? And if say the route table has a metering bucket, that's one case we just explained about VNet peering. But if this route table is a routing action is direct, which means it's going to an internet destination, right? In that case, you may want to build, and that internet destination is like sometimes it's a say it's a default route like 0/0 going to some destination, right? In that case, you can associate a policy, and the policy can have different destination IPs, destination that needs to be built separately. So the policy is associated to the routing table itself. Like if the routing table says that that it needs to be metered based on certain policies, then you can associate a policy to that. So in the pipeline, it is part of the routing action.
Priority lookup with match on destination prefix, and each rule will say the meter bucket to use it.
Yeah.
So in that case, where do you short circuit it? Because you said that you're going to count only once, and then if there happens to be a policy that directs you to internet route, then if you have counted it, does it mean that when you hit the routing table, you say that okay, there is some sort of an information that you have already counted it and you no longer count it anymore?
Right. None of these things we want to count like as a duplicate entry. So must be counted only once.
Okay, so in that case, I want to go back to the example of VNet to VNet, not the VNet peering, but on the VNet to VNet. Okay. So on the VNet to VNet, generally it should be counted on a mapping table, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then in that case, what happens is that if you have in the pipeline, you're going to first hit the routing table, and then you're going to hit the mapping table, right? Yes. And so since you have not hit the mapping table, would you not have counted it already on the routing table, and then would that not break your model?
So unless you associate metering on that route entry, there's no metering on that route table, right?
Okay, so what you're saying is that if there is a route entry that essentially is within the same VNet, like a VPC from one VNet to VNet, then you will not have any bucket associated with it, and hence it will not basically fall into it anyways. So it'll only go directly to the mapping. Okay, got it. Okay, thanks. By the way, since we are on this topic, earlier you mentioned, Prince, that you have a proposal PR. What's the number of the proposal PR?
Yeah, that's
that's 296, right? So that's from the AMD folks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
$296 is right here.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Do you need it in the chat window, or can you find it?
So I don't know if we have time now.
Thanks.
Now I think we understand the requirement now. Maybe I think we need to go back and look at that 296 to see how to understand it, right? So at least I think there is in that PR, there is a policy ID and there is a bucket ID. Are they the same or they're different? I don't think we mentioned the policy ID in the Prince document.
Yeah, I think in the Prince requirement, it's mentioned as a policy, right? The metering policy. So that is expressed as a meter policy ID and meter policy rules.
Let me look at it. I don't quite understand. Didn't notice that policy in the Prince document. Where did he mention the policy?
So the policy-based metering.
Oh, the policy-based metering. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
So yeah, to support this policy-based metering requirement, a new schema is being introduced. That's what is being called as metering policy. And the metering policy can be like a prefix-based, priority prefix-based, and it has rules underneath it. So I think that part is covered in 296, but yeah, you're right. I think given this, we have context now about requirements. We can go over this again in detail. So I don't know if we have time today.
Oh,
we have 8 minutes. Unless you guys want to go.
So I saw. I mean, based on I saw actually, from because I saw the policy was all those ACO rules that we have added. So therefore, my understanding of that the policy-based metering is that all the ACOs will have an action point into a bucket, and we'll do that count there. But sounds like this policy metering is a new set of matching rules that point into the meter, right?
Maybe
Yes.
Vijay, do you want to just flash your PR very quickly, and then probably it will tie in the two if you quickly go over the schema itself.
Are we talking
Yeah,
296?
Sure.
This one?
Yeah, 296.
Do you want me to look at it real quick? Or do you want to present it?
Yeah, I'm just like, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just go to the schema here. Yeah, so this is the metering policy. Yeah, so Guhan, so like you were asking, so this is a separate construct from the security policy, which is it looks similar to the security policy in the sense that it has a V4, V6 policy, and it has a bunch of rules, which is priority prefix based, and it derives a bucket ID. But the construct configuration object itself is different from a security policy.
And in this case, the IP prefix is always the destination based.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think from
where this this metering rules will land in the pipeline.
Yeah, so the attachment point for this is at a ENI level. So at per ENI, you can attach a V4 meter policy or a V6 meter policy.
No, I get that part, but I remember we have this, packet flow pipeline, right? So this, yeah. So where does that? Okay, so let me ask this question, right? So, do you also have a P4, this,
no, yeah, no. The implementation is not yet there, but we wanted to just establish the requirements and the AppDB schema, and the P4 proposal can come following that.
Okay.
But hey, so one quick question. So when in previously in the requirements, when Prince was talking about the policy, was he referring to the security policy or metering policy?
No, meter policy. So the reason why it is right. So the reason why it's the policy is separate for security and meter is because we believe that the orchestrator also treats the policy separately, as in it is two separate entities even from the controller point of view. So they push security policy separately and metering policy separately. So it kind of maps 1:1.
Yeah, so then I think that actually, muddies things up in my mind, because I think when Prince was basically talking about these, I guess the flow where it says policy, route, and mapping in terms of the priorities and then the order in which it was evaluating, Prince was referring back to this, the packet flow where he was pointing out to ACL and routing. So it's natural for us to think that policy really referring to this ACL. And then also routing is referring to the routing and so forth.
I had the same confusing, right? So
yeah. So I think we need to really say that we are introducing a new construct here, and it's a completely new thing which have never been introduced before, which is a metering policy.
Yes,
yeah, I think
that's right.
I'll clarify that in the requirement as well, that it's not ACL based policies, but it's different policy. Yeah.
And is this a policy after ACL, or is this before the ACL? I guess, yeah.
Yeah, in the outbound, it will be after the, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the placement of the policy table itself should not matter with respect to the security policy, because the security policy action is allow deny, whereas this is a completely orthogonal action. So I think from pipeline point of view, it should not matter. So we can keep it flexible.
I'm not sure it matters. Maybe you can explain to me why it doesn't matter. For example, if this metering is before the security policy, then you will count the packets that's supposed to be dropped by the security policy versus vice versa, right? So.
Right. So I think going back to the Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah. I think my point is like it in the pipeline. This the outbound policies are after the ACL, so these policies are like tied to the route policy, so should be after the.
Okay. Then I guess in the 296, right? So remember there was a diagram on that policy. I don't know where. I can't find. I mean, it's maybe in the earlier part of the document. Isn't that we have this outbound, inbound, this pipeline? We should update that to see where. Oh
Okay.
yeah.
This
This one. Yeah.
Right.
So then we should add the meter policy into this diagram, right? So where is that? Let's just clarify. Where is that after routing?
Yeah, I think logically it would sit after routing. Yeah.
Okay. Then we should update it.
Isn't it on the left there? It's like down and across to the left. It says metering.
Yeah,
no,
this is
this is probably where actually the meter happens, right? So, but
yeah.
The
this
bucket,
is where the accounting
right?
happens. Yeah. Against the bucket ID. So I guess what Guan is asking, where the policy is actually enforced, that would be after the routing logically in the pipeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Right. I think we can look at that to just update this pipeline diagram.
And the IP prefix, I guess the clarification we'll need is that this IP prefix, for example, the metering rules IP prefix, VNet case maybe is easier, but in the ST and the PL scenario, is that the IPv6 that has been rewrite to the prefix? Or is that IPv4 address?
Right. So I think this is the prefix in the packet. So from what we understand, this policy rule is used only in the case of the internet facing route case. So like for direct route case, in which case it would be the dip in the packet.
I saw in the Prince document there is in the 118 or 9 there is all traffic from UNI to a private link destination, right? So in that case, what do we count there?
So usually the PL is a mapping entry and there would be a bucket. Usually, I think that's how it's deployed today, as we know. Okay.
But it's still worth to clarify that this policy's IP address, which one failed to map, right? So in case of IP address rewriting case.
Yeah, I think one thing is, probably when the P4 model proposal comes in, those things should get ironed out as well, because there, I guess we need to, in terms of the behavior, we'll have to specify what exactly is the IP address that is picked up for this policy lookup.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helps, I think this came out in last review as well, is the relationship, right? How things are related or interrelated with respect to, the current objects that we have, whether it's route table, whether it's ENI, whether it's mapping table, whether it's ACL. And if we are defining something, as new things such as meter policy, what's the relationship? How do you derive it, and then how does it come into picture? When does it form? And when does it get deleted and so forth, right?
Into the pipeline picture?
So let me ask this question, right? So when do we expect we'll have a draft for the P4 pipeline?
So I think we need to start. We'll start looking at that as well. We haven't got any bandwidth to look at that, so it should be coming soon. I can't commit to a time yet, but we will also look at that proposal for the P4 pipeline.
Yeah. So once we have agreed here, I think we'll start working on that. Agreed on this.
Oh,
Thanks,
I mean,
Sanjay.
agree. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the
We are talking
requirement
about
part,
chicken egg. Yeah.
the requirement part is not, it's mainly about the clarification, right? So these are the, all these scenarios we need to address, right? So there's nothing to not agree on. I mean, yeah, so then your implementation, if it matches, right? So yeah, we may have some comments on, some of the namings, right? So those kind of things, but I think we should start working on that P4 pipeline to get more clarity. It's just help to understanding. Yeah. So.
Okay. So one thing is that, so along with this, the schema definition from AppDB point of view, we have also included some examples for the whatever is there, right? So I think if
how about this, right? So maybe next, I don't think this week we have the time now, but next week let's go over that again, right? So.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So this is enlightening session. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, nerd or not.
So we're pretty far over for today. Is it okay if I go ahead and wrap it up for the day, my engineering folks?
Thanks.
Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, I love these conversations. Yeah. But my brain is full and I have another meeting. So I'll go ahead and end the call, or I'll stop the recording. I'm going to stop now. And Prince, thank